Boatworks today is sponsored by Total Boat and Alexseal Yacht Coatings, as well as supported by the generosity from the beautiful folks over on Patreon. Thank you so much. So welcome back to the shop, everybody. Hope you are all doing well. My name is Andy with Boatworks today. Now, I'm just going to come right out and say it. Unpopular opinion, I'm sure, but it is officially winter. Now, technically not according to the calendar, but I really don't care what the calendar says. When the ground is no longer green, it's officially winter. Now, for those of us that are up north, the season, it's done. By now, all of the boats have been hauled out of the water, and the marinas, they're probably in full shrink wrapping mode, getting everything lined up for rotating in and out for over the winter projects, or just tucking them away into the corner lot and just saying goodnight for the next 6 months. Now, you folks down south, y'all are lucky. You're no longer standing at the gates of hell. Temperatures have come down significantly, and it's that perfect time of the year where you're trying to get some of these a little bit more time-consuming and more entailed projects buttoned up. Now, I do understand cool to you does not mean the same thing as cool to us, folks up north. But either way, if you're in your 50s or warmer, you're not going to get any sympathy from me. So, I mean, it's still very, very comfortable working. Just enjoy it while you got it. Now, real quick, before we jump into this, I'm going to do a shameless self-plug here. If you do have a project coming up that you'd like some one-on-one help with over the winter, I do offer a lot of consulting, and I run all of that through Patreon. Now, I have links for that down below in the description. There's several different tiers there, ranging from email only all the way up to weekly video chats. So if there's something there that might be helpful or of interest to you, go ahead and check that out. Again, links will be down below in the description. If it works out, great. If it doesn't, that's perfectly fine too. But I just want to let everyone know that that is an option that is available. So as you can see by the title of this video, today I want to go over some things that you can do to kind of stack the cards in your favor if you're going to be doing some of these painting projects in these cooler temperatures. Now, what do I mean by cooler temps? Well, in the painting world, generally speaking, 50 degrees Fahrenheit is like the absolute bare minimum. Like anything cooler than that, you run the risk of the material not curing properly or just flat out not curing at all. But as far as the actual range of what I consider to be cool temps, I'd say anywhere from 50 up to 65-ish, maybe even 70 degrees. Now, there's one very important distinction that I want to make here, and I want you to keep this in mind as we're going through this video. Unless I say otherwise, when I'm talking about temperatures, I'm not talking about air temperatures. That really is somewhat irrelevant. What I'm concerned with is the actual surface, or the temperature of the surface that you're going to be painting. So just as a real quick analogy here to kind of drive this one home, let's just say you wake up in the morning, you're going to be doing your application. You get out to the barn or the field, wherever you're going to be doing your work, and temperatures have come up to 65, 68 degrees. Beautiful, beautiful day, right? Well, but overnight, temperatures were in the high 30s, low 40s. So first thing in the morning, even though the air temperature is going to be well within range, the surface of the hull or of the deck or whatever it is you're going to be painting, that's likely still going to be around that 40, 45 degrees. And that's not going to work out well for you. So you just need to get a little bit more time or do one of these little tricks we're going to be talking about here shortly to get that surface temperature up to that 50 degrees plus before you start doing your application. Taking a little bit of a sidestep here, again, still staying on topic is when we're talking about temperatures here, but probably the easiest thing that you can do to help stack the cards in your favor in these cooler temps is going to be to heat the boat from the inside out. Now, this can be done pretty easily with one or even two space heaters. Boats that are upwards of 36, 42 feet, a couple of space heaters can make a night and day difference. Now, one very important thing that I want to emphasize here, when I'm talking about space heaters, I am not talking about those electric ones that have the glowing red exposed heating elements. Those are just a bonfire waiting to happen. Instead, look for one of these oil-filled electric space heaters. They're far, far safer, and I think in a lot of cases, they're actually rated for continuous use. So as a quick example, and I've done this several times, outside temperatures, air temps, they can be in the 30s. You have a couple of space heaters running, the temperature of the hull or of the deck, it could be in the low 60s. So even though it's cooler outside, below that 50 degree threshold, as long as the surface of that deck or the hull is 50 or better, you're going to be good to go. Now, another thing that you can do is store all of your painting supplies inside of a warming box. Now, this is something I cobbled together a few years ago. It's nothing fancy. It's just a styrofoam cooler with an electric heating pad inside. Now, this worked extremely well. When I first tested this, I was outside. It was in the middle of winter. It was probably, 10, 15 degrees outside. And with this sitting out there, after a half an hour, everything that was inside of this warming box, it was in the mid 70s. And even though it was still, again, 10, 15 degrees outside, this works extremely well, and it cost, I don't know, maybe $15, $20 to kind of cobble together. Now, by warming your materials, this does one very important thing is when you're talking about solvents and primers and paints and all that, warm material is a thinner viscosity than cooler material. And that's kind of the big one there. Reducing the viscosity of this stuff, it makes it much, much easier to mix and thoroughly incorporate all the different components. But most importantly, when you're loading up your roller and you're trying to apply this, because it's a thinner viscosity, it's going to roll out in a much thinner, more uniform film. Versus if you were to try to roll this out while it's still cool, say again, 50, 55 degrees, you're going to be laying a much thicker film down. And I can guarantee you, as sure as the sun's going to come up tomorrow, I will guarantee you that if you apply this and it's too thick because it was on the cool side, it is going to sag and curtain and run on you. And that is just an absolute disaster. Another thing is make sure you're using the appropriate reducer for the temperatures that you're working in. Now, granted, this mostly applies if you're going to be spraying because you have different options depending on what kind of temperatures you're in. So for example, if you're going to be spraying and it's hot, say like 90 degrees or more, you're going to want to use their slow reducer. If it's cool, say 50, 60 degrees, you're going to want to use their fast reducer. Now, 9 times out of 10, your go-to, if you're going to be in the 70s and 80s, your go-to is going to be their medium reducer. And that's really all I've ever used. And I was between, say, like 65 and almost 80 degrees, and it's always worked out perfect. So, I mean, if you're not quite sure which one to get, I would start with the medium and just kind of see how it goes. You can always go up or go down. Now, what's the main difference between these 3 different types is essentially it's just how fast that reducer evaporates out of the mix. In this kind of a situation, the reducer is essentially, it's just a carrier for the product to get it to the gun and onto the surface in a fine enough particle size. So again, if you're going to be spraying, use the appropriate reducer. But if you're going to be rolling, this is kind of where it gets a little bit tricky. If you're going to be rolling, you really only have one option, and that is their rolling or brushing rolling reducer. So they're 5015. Regardless of the temperatures, this is what you're going to want to stick with, and you're not going to want to kind of play with the ratios at all. This material is mixed 2 to 1 to 1 when you're going to be rolling, so you're going to be doing equal parts of the converter as well as the reducer. And out of all of the reducers that Alexseal offers between their spraying and their rolling, the rolling reducer is by far the slowest evaporating. Now, as tempting as it may be to try and say, well, maybe I'll use one of the spraying reducers while I'm rolling it. Can it be done? Well, yeah, you can roll out anything. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to have enough open time to flow out and level, and do what you want it to do. So I would say, as tempting as it may be to try some of these other types of reducers, if you're going to be rolling, just stick with their 5015, their rolling reducer, and you'll do just fine. So now you may be asking yourself, well, if I'm going to be rolling, is there anything more that I can do other than just keep my stuff warm? And the answer is yes. There's this little thing called an accelerator, and they make them for both your primer as well as, gotta cover my face, as well as the paint itself. Now, this particular primer, this is for their 442 finishing, and then this is going to be the accelerator for their 501 or their X line of top coats, which is most likely, if you're rolling, you're going to be using their 501 line. Now, as far as how this stuff works, let me take a little bit of a step back here. Now, essentially, because we're working with 2 component materials here, we're talking about a curing process. And a curing process, when it's in warmer temperatures, that process happens faster. And in cooler temps, that happens much slower. So by using an accelerator, think of it as, even though you might be in, say, like these 50-degree temps, using an accelerator can speed up that curing process anywhere from 15 to 30%. It's kind of like, think of it as a cheat for making the paint think that it's in warmer conditions than what it really is. And as far as how this stuff works, because it's an accelerator, it speeds up the curing process of both, the primer or the paint. Where that kind of comes into play is that by doing so, it also shortens the window to where the paint film or the primer film is going to be open enough to where it can be negatively impacted by moisture in the air, whether it's fog rolls in, dew, condensation, or even for the folks, I'm talking you, South Florida, if you have afternoon rain showers coming in. If you've got a 3 or 4 hour window after application, even if it rains, downpours on you, it's probably not going to make any bit of difference because it's had a chance to, kind of skin over and do its thing. Now, you take that same kind of scenario and, you get a rain shower 3 or 4 afters and you did not use an accelerator. You're probably going to end up having to strip it all back off and start over. So not really the situation you want to find yourself in. And the last thing that you can do comes down to time management, specifically planning out the steps of each of your tasks here. So just as a quick example, let's just say you're going in your day of application. Going into that day, you want to make sure that all of your prep work is already finished. So everything has been sanded, everything has been cleaned, it has been taped off. Any prep that needs to be done is done the day before or prior to that. So when you come in on the day of application, you literally give it a quick wipe down, mix up your material, and you're off to the races. And ideally, when you're doing this, you want to try and start rolling out your material so that you can hopefully be done by noon. I mean, so winter months, days are shorter, we have a lot less daylight. So you want to have, a 3 to 4-ish hour window after application for the accelerator to do its thing. That way, when temps start cooling off, dew starts to form, condensation, bugs come out, whatever it may happen to be. If you can give that material that 3, 4 or more hour window to kind of, at least get the initial curing process underway, you should be in very, very good shape. So as a quick recap, top 5 things that you can do to help bank the cards in your favor if you're going to be doing one of these painting projects in cooler temps is number 1, try and warm the boat the best you can. And again, use an electric space heater, oil filled, not the exposed glowing element kind, bonfire waiting to happen. No bueno, that'd be a terrible day. Number 2, try and keep your materials warm in one of these warming boxes. And again, I think I built this one for $15, maybe $20, and you can do a whole bunch of other things with it as well. It's well worth the time, the 15, 20 minutes it takes to actually put one together. Number 3 is make sure you are using the appropriate reducer for the temperatures that you're in. Now this, again, mostly applies if you're going to be spraying. If you're going to be rolling, your options are real limited. You're going to be, using their 5015, their rolling reducer, but that leads directly into number 4, which is if you're in these cooler temps, use an accelerator for both the paint as well as the primer. That can, in some situations, that can make the difference between success and absolute failure, good or bad day, however you want to call it, but it does make that big of a difference. And number 5, go into the project, have everything planned out, have everything prepped ahead of time so that on application day, it's just a quick mix, a quick wipe down, and you're off to the races. And give yourself enough time, ideally, so where you've got that 3, 4 hour window after application for the material to start doing its thing. And then at that point, as long as it doesn't freeze, you shouldn't have any concern as far as if it rains, if the dew settles in, you should be just fine. And on that note, I think I'm going to wrap this one up. So as always, I hope you enjoyed this and I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. Thank you in advance. I appreciate it. If you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave those down below. I will do my best to follow up with you. And as always, I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful weekend. And I will see you in the next video.
This has been a Boatworks Today production.